Hey, environmental science. Okay, so at this point, you should have your environmental science notebook out. You're about to take notes on something called ecosystem services. If you don't have your notebook yet, go ahead and pause this video, grab your notebook, and get ready to take one or two slides of notes. All right, so at this point, you should have already worked on your card sort where you determined what some of these different properties and characteristics would fall under which category or which type of ecosystem service. So, the environment as a whole provides a lot of things for us, many things that we probably really don't consider the fact that those are actually coming from the environment. It's almost everything that we have. So we're going to go through each one of these four different categories to highlight what different type of service is provided from each one of these categories. So what you should do right now, and I would recommend that if you want to pause this video to set up your quadrants, your four boxes, um, and then I'm going to go ahead and explain each one by one. If you want to pause after each one to copy it down or listen to it, whatever your process is, just note that you can pause this video so that way you can take all the notes down. So let's start up here in the upper left-hand corner with provisioning services. And this, I think, is one of the easiest ones to understand. So when we think of provisions, those are like products, things that we tangibly can get from an ecosystem. So we can grow food in an ecosystem. There are lots of different types of raw materials. There are fresh water, there's medicines. So if we're specifically thinking about, and we want to think about a native ecosystem, not a farm, we're thinking about a natural ecosystem. So if we were to think about, let's pick one ecosystem, like maybe like the Amazon rainforest, we would think about what kinds of food could we possibly get from the plants that are growing in that ecosystem. And then the raw materials and the fact that we can get fresh water. And yes, we find lots of our medicines in nature. So if you've got this information down and you're ready to move on to the next one, we're going to look at the regulating services. This is a tough one. Regulating services look at what is the ecosystem doing to keep nature in balance or quote unquote regulate the balance of the ecosystem. So things like some examples would be the fact that through photosynthesis, it is going to improve the local air quality, and it will help manage or maintain the existing climate. In addition to that, it can also, through the process of photosynthesis, reduce carbon emissions through sequestration. Sequestration basically means taking carbon dioxide out of the air and sequestering it and storing it, whether it's stored in the soil or it's stored in the roots and stems of plants or trunks of the trees. It's helping kind of regulate our climate by pulling out those excess carbon dioxide molecules that we have put into the air. It also helps prevent extreme impacts from natural disasters. So, for example, if there was a major flood in a native natural ecosystem, more than likely you're not going to see any huge impact on the ecosystem because of the fact that there are so many plants with so many roots, and it allows for that excess water to be absorbed right into the soil. It also, a regulating service would be water filtration. So we know that water, when it rains, it goes into the soil. We've learned about how soil is such a good filter, and eventually that water will pool in an aquifer, groundwater underneath. And lastly, another example would be pollination, and that helps regulate, since pollinators are a keystone species that helps regulate the performance of that ecosystem. Okay, we're going to hop over here to the bottom left, and we're going to look at habitat and supportive services. These are services that are necessary to create healthy ecosystems. So, what kinds of things need to be present in an ecosystem in order to support life and support that ecosystem? So, things like being able to have different types of both living and non-living things in this ecosystem to provide habitat for species. It helps in the formation of soil. Photosynthesis would be a huge piece to this. It's a service that is present in order to support and maintain the health of that ecosystem, as well as biodiversity. Biodiversity we're going to learn about in a future unit, but essentially biodiversity is really important to support the health of an ecosystem. The more biodiversity you have, the healthier the ecosystem is going to be. So that looks at what kinds of things are happening or present to support that ecosystem. All right, the last one we're going to look at is cultural services, and we take this from looking at from the human perspective. So these are different ways that we can enjoy the ecosystem without actually taking anything from the ecosystem. So just being present and integrating ourselves within nature. So some examples of this would be different kinds of recreational activities, tourism. Being outside in nature can help with your mental and physical health. It can give you inspiration for different art or some type of spiritual experience. So these are the 4 different ecosystem services. Any type of service that an ecosystem provides can be categorized into one of these 4 different categories. Provisioning, looking at what can we take from the ecosystem. Regulating is what is happening in the ecosystem to regulate that ecosystem. Supporting services, what kinds of things happen on the regular to just support that healthy ecosystem. And then lastly, the cultural services. So what can we enjoy when we get into nature and not take? Okay, I hope this summed everything up for you. Make sure that you have these in your notes and be prepared for an exit ticket that may come your way on Friday. I'm sorry, an entrance ticket that may come your way on Friday.